Sometimes, oppression does not come from a stranger, but from the people closest to your heart. Yet, Allah never abandons a broken heart. He breaks it only to exalt it even higher than before. This is the story of a woman oppressed in the name of obedience and deceived in the name of love. But when she prostrated to Allah, crying, the downfall of all those who wronged her began. Dear friends, we pray that Allah fills your days with peace and light, overflowing with His remembrance. And before we begin our story, let us make the best possible beginning. May peace and blessings be upon our Master, Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, the light that illuminates hearts, the mercy that encompasses the worlds. Following this beautiful remembrance, let us start our tale. At the southern edge of the village, there stood a house unlike the others. In that house lived a woman who regarded herself as a queen. Her name was Rabia. She was past 50. Her features were severe, like a stream that had once flowed over a deeply lined face and then dried up. She neither laughed much nor spoke unnecessarily. When she did speak, it was only to command. She viewed the world as her small kingdom, and her son, Malik, as her crown. She was unwilling to share him with anyone. One day, Salama, a gossiping neighbor, came to her. She was a woman who knew even the unspoken words of the village and used her tongue like a sweet needle. With a mocking tone, she said, "Masha'Allah, Rabia, your son has become a merchant everyone talks about now. When will we share in your joy? When will we see your daughter-in-law?" Rabia lifted her head. Her voice was harsh and echoed in the ears. "I do not want a woman who will compete with me for my son's heart. I want a Allah-fearing wife who will serve him." Salama chuckled softly. Teasingly, she asked, "Well, have you found such a person yet?" Rabia irritably stirred the lentils in front of her and replied, "The girls of today have learned to speak but have forgotten how to serve. I want someone who is an orphan, who knows the value of a single bite of food, and who understands what I mean just by the look in my eye." Just then, Malik returned from the market. A sack of wheat was on his shoulder. There was a tired but sincere smile on his face. He kissed his mother's hand. "Mother, the market was blessed today. Praise be to Allah. We sold everything we had." Rabia replied with a cold voice, "Sustenance comes from Allah, my son. But remember, when a woman comes between a mother and her son, that blessing does not last long." Malik remained silent out of respect, but he felt a tightness in his chest. His mother's love was slowly turning into a chain that isolated him from the outside world. He did not know that fate was about to open that door wide, and that trial would change everything. The next morning, Salama came again. She knocked on the door with a new piece of news, as always. She began her words with sweet delight. "I heard about a girl today. Her name is Safiye. She is an orphan. She lives with her aunt at the edge of the village. She sews. She helps the poor. Everyone who hears of her speaks well of her." Rabia was silent for a moment. Then her eyes shone as if she had found what she was looking for. Slowly, as if passing a verdict, she said, "An orphan? That is exactly what I seek. An orphan girl knows obedience." That night, Rabia sat before the pale light of the oil lamp. As the shadow of the flickering flame danced on the walls, she spoke to herself. "I will find a woman for my son who will make me the crown on her head. When I speak, she will lower her eyes. I will raise her with my own hand." Meanwhile, Malik was asleep, unaware. He did not know that the next day would bring news that seemed beautiful, but carried a long, arduous trial behind it. The days sped by, and the news of the engagement became a village reality, the talk of the market. At the edge of the village, a small house awaited its owners. It had an earthen courtyard, a wooden door made of wild plum, and an old copper lantern that shone with patience. Malik had prepared the house in the best way he could. 2 new mats, a basket full of earthenware jugs, and a holy Koran, a legacy from his father, which he placed on the highest shelf like the crown of the house. Safiye arrived in a plain, modest white dress. Her head and neck were covered. Her face bore the light of gratitude that the poor often know. Holding her aunt's arm, she looked down, offering an occasional shy smile. Her heart trembled with a prayer. "O Allah, make this house a source of peace and mercy for me, and let no one's word prevail in this house. Let only your pleasure prevail." At the door, Malik greeted the guests with a genuine smile. His eyes held the joy of a child who had finally found the toy he had long sought. There were no drums or extravagant celebrations, only the whispered well-wishes of the neighboring women, mint-scented tea, dates, milk, and humble sweets. Everything was the ornament of sincerity. The marriage contract was sealed, the words extended like a thread woven with light between 2 hearts. When the acceptance was given, it was as if even the small room trembled. The walls echoed with, "May Allah bless it." In the corner of the courtyard, Rabia sat silently. Time seemed to have stopped around her. There was neither anger nor joy on her face. A silence, like the stillness of a knife hidden within fabric, watched her son's new wife. She heard the fragile beauty in Safiya's whispered voice. "Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah who brought me together with you." She watched Safiya bow her head and remain silent out of shyness, and she felt something heavy knotting in her chest. "So, my son has another heart now," she thought to herself. The crowd dispersed, leaving only the closest relatives. Safiya turned to her husband and said, "Let us pray 2 units of prayer, giving thanks to Allah." She raised her hands, her eyes filled with tears. "O Lord, if I have entered this marriage for your pleasure, make me a means for my husband to be protected from trials. Turn our house into a home that pleases you." Malik looked at her with admiration and whispered, "Such a sincere prayer I had only seen in my mother's eyes when she was sick. Now, you have reminded me of that peace again." Rabia heard these words. Her heart trembled, but she composed herself and could only utter in a barely perceptible voice, "May Allah bless it." It was a few words, but they were like a stone thrown into still water. The ripples created by that stone would start a storm no one could yet see. Music. Safiye entered the small kitchen. She lit the lantern and began to prepare 2 cups of tea. She brought the warm milk and offered it to Rabia first. With a gentle voice, she said, "Here you are, mother." Rabia lifted the cup. She looked at her daughter-in-law's face for a moment. Then she took a small sip and put it aside. "The milk needs a little sugar." Safiye smiled. "I'll add it right away," she said, rising to her feet. But Rabia stopped her with a raised hand. "Leave it, my daughter. Don't tire yourself on your first night. We will organize the household chores together tomorrow." After everyone was asleep that night, Safiya quietly got up and began to tidy the house. She placed the Quran on a higher shelf. She hung the water jug in a spot easily reachable for Rabia. She straightened the edges of the mats so no one would trip and fall. Her hands were working, but her heart was in prostration. O Lord, you know that my only wish in this world is your pleasure and protection. If you have made me the daughter of Rabia, then unite my heart with hers. Rabia could not sleep that night. She heard footsteps coming from the courtyard. The daughter-in-law was tidying up and working silently as if she had been in this house for years. Two things were conflicting within the woman. One was a compassion that slowly melted, like a warmth inside her. The other was a pride that hardened, refusing to surrender the key to the castle. We shall see tomorrow morning, she thought to herself. Dawn trembled the walls of the new house. Safiye went out to the courtyard. She shivered as the cold water touched her hands. The morning dew sparkled on the pebbles. She performed her prayer. Then she opened the door, letting the morning light stream in. Soon after, Malik arrived, a tired but cheerful smile on his face. I've prepared breakfast, Safiye said. Hot bread, olive oil, and sweet milk, just as your mother likes it. Malik laughed. You learned my mother's taste quickly. Safiye replied, my heart learned it from the first night. Those morning hours were like a long promise. Life seemed to be opening a peaceful path for the two young people. But from the corner of the door, a third pair of eyes was watching them. Rabia's eyes. There was the coldness of years in those eyes, a coldness that would not be warmed up in an instant. Safiye smiled, and Malik smiled. Then the bride turned and said sweetly, Good morning, mother. Rabia replied with a measured, firm voice, A blessed morning. May it be for the good, inshallah. But remember, the order of the house must be according to my way. It was at that moment that the first spark ignited in Safi's heart, not of fear, but of caution. She understood that happiness requires effort, and the toughest struggle is sometimes fought against the one closest to you. The first few days passed this way. The house was like a warm breeze blowing after a long winter. Safi would wake up at dawn, wash her face with cold water, and start the day by praying, O Allah, grant blessing in my husband and guide my mother-in-law's heart. She cooked the meals herself, cleaned the house before Rabia woke up, and eased Malik's fatigue with the smile on her face as she bid him farewell to the market. But Rabia watched this silent peace with mixed feelings, admiration on one hand and secret anger on the other. There was something about Safiye that made her uneasy, an unshakable composure, a smile that never died. If only she would complain just once, she thought, but Safiye neither wept nor grew angry. When Rabia spoke harshly, she responded silently. The more the older woman raised her voice, the more Safi lowered her head and remained silent. That silence extinguished the fire in the words. One morning, Rabia was sitting in the courtyard. Her eyes were fixed far away, and her voice was loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Safiye, why haven't you prepared the food yet? A calm voice was heard from inside. I was performing my mid-morning prayer, mother. I will finish right away and prepare it. Rabia's face wrinkled. She turned to the neighbor sitting next to her and sneered, Even prayer is now an excuse to delay the meal. Her neighbor let out a sly chuckle. Rabia, it seems your daughter-in-law knows how to please your son better than you do. Rabia fell silent, but the fire inside her grew larger in that quiet. In the evening, Malik sat in the courtyard after a tiring day. The sweat on his brow had not yet dried. He reached for the glass of water with a smile. What a strange day, Safai. My provision increased from where I least expected it. As Safi placed the food in front of him, she said softly, "Perhaps because your heart went out clean, without carrying any malice, hatred, or anger towards anyone." Malik watched her attentively. "Since I married you, blessings have been following me like a shadow. People trust me more. I feel a light on my face that wasn't there before." Safia lowered her head. Her voice dropped to a whisper like a prayer. "Blessing is from Allah, Malik, but He grants it only to sincere hearts that oppress no one." Just then, Rabia heard the conversation. She slowed her steps and listened from the door. Then she entered with an icy voice. "Sustenance comes from work, not talk." Malik respectfully turned his head. "You are right, mother, but her words comfort the soul." Rabia looked at her son for a long time. Then she said harshly, "It seems you forgot who stayed up all night watching over you when you were a child." Malik flinched. He quickly adjusted his knee and said, "Heaven forbid, mother, you are the source of all good." Rabia left the room. A silence fell. Safia lowered her head, whispering internally, "How difficult it is to love someone whose heart is enslaved by another." Safia served Rabia in everything. She strove to win her affection, even in the smallest tasks. But she never heard a single thank you from the woman. Every kindness, every courtesy, was interpreted as deceit or pretense. One day, when she placed the food on the table, Rabia tasted it. "The meat is too salty." Safia replied with an embarrassed voice, "I tasted it, mother. It seemed balanced to me, but I can make a new one if you like." The woman's voice was like thorns. "Are you questioning my palate now?" Safia immediately drew back. "Heaven forbid, I didn't mean to upset you. I only wanted to explain." But Rabia's face flushed even more. She stood up. "Are you starting to raise your voice against me? A daughter-in-law does not stand and speak against her mother-in-law." Just then, Malik walked in. Seeing the scene, he stopped. "What is happening here?" he asked. His mother pretended to wipe her eyes. Her voice was shaky but calculated. "She no longer hesitates to raise her voice against me. I feel like a servant in my own house." Safia spoke suddenly, not to defend herself, but to hold back her tears. "Allah is my witness. I spoke nothing but respect. I only wanted to explain." But Rabia cut her off. "Now you talk back to me too?" Malik raised his hand in the air, a gesture demanding silence from both sides. His voice was tired, but filled with heavy resolve. "Enough, both of you." Safia fell silent. She quietly withdrew to her room. Something inside her felt broken. She sat on her knees, rested her head on her arms, and began to pray in a whisper. "O Lord, make me among those who endure. Direct my husband's heart to good. Keep away from me the evil of those who oppress unknowingly." Outside, Rabia, wiping away fake tears, thought to herself, "Now my son has started listening to me. I won't let her turn him against me anymore." That night, the walls of the house were silent. Malik did not speak. Safia tried to smile at him, but his words were short and his face was grim. A wall, built not of stone but of suspicion, had risen between them. Rabia slept peacefully that night, as if she had won a small, temporary victory. Safia, however, wept silently. Her tears soaked her pillow until exhaustion numbed her heart. The next day, Rabia returned from a neighbor's visit. She arrived at the door. She shouted so loudly that even the neighbors could hear. Safiye! A soft voice came from inside. Yes, mother. Why did you lock the door? Safiye paused in surprise. I had closed it so dust wouldn't get in, mother. A grim smile appeared on the woman's face. There was no warmth in it. Oh, from dust, you say, or from people? Safiye swallowed hard for a moment. A lump formed in her throat. By Allah, I had no bad intention. Rabia raised her eyebrows. We always think well of you too. Then she stood up and walked inside. But as she closed the door, she deliberately muttered loudly, Closing the door has become a trick now. In the evening, Malik went to his mother's side. The woman was silent, her face measuredly gloomy. The son asked anxiously, Mother, what is wrong now? The woman said in a cold voice, Nothing. Only your wife locked the door on me today. She didn't open it until I knocked repeatedly. Malik's face froze. Did she really do that? Rabia placed her hand on her chest. Her voice was trembling but calculated. I don't lie about anyone, my son, but I think a change has begun in her heart against us. A little later, Malik went into Safiya's room. The woman was holding her prayer beads, praying silently. She looked up when she saw him. But Malik's voice was unusually harsh. Why did you shut the door on my mother's face? Safi looked at him in surprise. The door? I closed it to keep the dust out, but I didn't hear her voice. Malik's voice grew heavier. My mother said she knocked repeatedly. He took a step closer. Safiya's voice trembled. By Allah, I didn't hear it. I swear I didn't hear it. The man's reply was cold. His heart felt like stone. I don't want oaths. Just be more careful. Safiya's eyes filled with tears. She silently left the room. No sound came as tears rolled down her cheeks. That night, Rabia sat in the courtyard. The air was dark, and the wind was dragging dry leaves. The woman smiled to herself. Now, my son is starting to see me with his own eyes. But at that moment, Safiya was kneeling in her room, praying. Tears streamed down her eyes, her voice broken by sobs. O Allah, do not make me a source of trial for anyone. Guide those who oppress me to the right path. I am a weak servant. I have no refuge but you. Malik tossed and turned in his bed. He listened intently to the ceiling and the howling wind. It was as if the howl was whispering a truth in his ear. Justice does not vanish, but when it is withdrawn from hearts, it extinguishes the light of homes. And so, the days began to pass slowly. Even the air in that house had lost its flavor. It no longer smelled of prayer or peace. Safiye woke up every morning intending to be patient, and Rabia woke up intending to fight. Now, the arguments were not hidden from the neighbors or the walls. Even the walls seemed to silently weep, holding every whisper of that house within them. Malik had become a shadow. He came and went, but he brought neither warmth nor love. One morning, under the gray clouds, Rabia was sitting in the small courtyard with her neighbor, Jamila. In her hand was an old gold necklace she had kept for years. As she touched it with her fingertips, she spoke softly. I inherited this necklace from my mother. It holds a valuable place in my heart. Jamila looked at it admiringly. MashaAllah, it's beautiful. Rabia whispered, with a sly smile on her lips. Tell me, Jamila, what would people say? If this necklace were to disappear? The neighbor was surprised. They would probably say someone stole it. The woman squinted her eyes. Yes, that's exactly what I want. Then she put the necklace in a small box and hid it under her old clothes. She turned to Jamila. Don't tell anyone that you saw me here this morning. The day passed ordinarily. But in the evening, when Safia was about to change the bed covers in Rabia's room, the woman suddenly screamed, Don't touch that wardrobe! Safia was startled. I just wanted to dust it, mother. The woman intentionally became angry. Her voice sharpened. I told you not to touch it! Safia immediately backed away. Her eyes were lowered, and her steps were shaky, and she quietly left the room. The next day, the house was silent, until a scream cut through the silence like a knife. My necklace, my gold necklace is gone. Rabia's voice filled the house. Safia ran in fear. What happened, mother? The woman angrily threw her hands up in the air. My necklace is gone. It was my mother's heirloom. Who else entered my room besides me? Only you. Safia trembled. By Allah, I didn't see anything. Rabia shouted. You were rummaging through the wardrobe yesterday. Now your intention is clear. The sound spilled outside. Neighbors gathered at the doors. Whispering began. Just then, Malik was returning from the shop. His face was full of worry. When he entered the house, he found his mother weeping. What is happening here? He said, out of breath. Rabia pretended to wipe her tears. My necklace has been stolen, my son. It was my mother's legacy. Malik's gaze froze. He slowly turned toward Safia. His voice cracked. Is this true, Safia? Tears poured from Safia's eyes. Are you accusing me, Malik? Me, who served you like your own child? Rabia sobbed. Who else was in my room besides you? Safia raised her head. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. If there is an ounce of betrayal in my heart, may Allah take away my sight and hearing. But I am innocent in the sight of Allah. The neighbors tried to intervene. They said, Don't make a big deal of it. But the air in that house was heavy. Even the silence had become faithless. Malik stood there as if his soul had left his body. He did not know what to say or where to look. Safia approached him. Her eyes were full, her voice trembling. Is this the reward for my patience, Malik? Was it my destiny for you to believe in injustice? The man murmured in a low, broken-hearted voice. Now is not the time to talk. Let's find the necklace first. Rabia smiled internally. She turned her face away, feigning grief. But in the depths of her heart, there was the coolness of sweet revenge. Hours passed, but even time was afraid to breathe in that house. The crowd searched for hours. Every corner of the house, the courtyard, the storage room, and even near the well was searched. Finally, the scene planned by Rabia arrived. The neighbor Jamila, the woman secretly included in the plot that morning, entered Safia's room alone. Minutes later, she let out a scream. I found it! I found it! Here, under Safia's bed. Everything froze instantly. The women's whispers ceased. Even the wind was silent. All eyes turned to Safia. Safia's face became deathly pale. Her hands trembled, and her voice was choked. By Allah, I didn't put it there. I swear I didn't even know it was there. But no one was listening to her now. Not the neighbors, not Malik, not even the sky. Malik stood still, like a heart stuck between believing and denying. Rabia's voice echoed over the crowd. There is no place in this house for someone who betrays trust. Malik took a few steps back. There was a heavy stone in his heart. He couldn't breathe. Safiye raised her hands to the sky amidst her tears. Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is sufficient for me, and He is the best disposer of affairs. Then she turned to Malik. She pleaded through her tears. Malik, look me in the eyes. Tell me, am I lying? But Malik lowered his head. His heart was cowardly, his eyes blind. He muttered in a muffled voice, I cannot stand this situation anymore. At that moment, Rabia cut in, with a voice as sharp as an arrow. Divorce her, my son. Save your name before you are more disgraced. The house was submerged in silence, and then a word left Malik's lips, sharp as a sword, heavy as a death sentence. You are divorced, Safiye. That word struck like lightning. Safiye's body trembled, her vision blurred. She took a few steps backward until her back was against the wall. She neither shouted nor protested. She only closed her eyes and whispered, O Lord, you know that I neither betrayed, nor lied, nor oppressed. Now, accept me with your mercy that only you know. Then she lowered her head. In her simple dress and headscarf, soaked with the tears, she walked out of the house. Rabia watched from behind the door, with a stone-cold face. There was neither remorse in her eyes nor mercy, only the cold silence of triumph. Malik stood, rooted to the spot. He only heard Safi's receding footsteps. It was as if every step tore a piece from his heart. Months passed, like a slow healing wound. The house where laughter once echoed was now wrapped in the silence of a grave. Sustenance and blessing had also withdrawn. Customers coming to the shop returned without buying anything. His goods piled up, and his debts increased. Malik's shoulders slumped more and more each day. Rabia's body had weakened. Her color faded. Her face was like a candle, slowly melting away. One evening, Malik returned home with weary steps. He put the basket of vegetables down. He sat next to his mother. His voice was hushed. Mother, are you still not feeling well? The woman spoke with difficulty, breathless. The body is broken by old age, my son. But what truly tires is the conscience. Malik raised his eyebrows, surprised. Conscience? Why do you say that now? The woman averted her eyes from him, her voice cracked, her words spilling out. Behind every harshness lies an oppressor who thinks they are right, and I can no longer bear the weight of that assumption. Malik felt a pang inside. Something twisted right in the center of his chest. It was the first pain of regret. That night, he sat alone in the courtyard. The flickering light of the oil lamp split his shadow on the wall in two. The dance of the flame seemed to whisper, justice may be delayed, but it is never forgotten. At that moment, a storm broke out inside Malik. He whispered to himself, how many times did I raise my voice against that poor woman? How many times did I believe a fake tear, but turn my back on a victim's true tear? He closed his eyes, and the past rushed at him like a wild wind. He saw Safiye preparing a humble table in the kitchen. On her face was the familiar peace, saying, Praise be to Allah. He granted blessing, even if it was little. Then he remembered. The day he divorced her, she had said in a trembling voice, O Allah, I am wronged. You help me. Malik let out a deep sigh. He covered his face with his hands. His heart trembled under the weight of a conscience that had been silenced for years. A few days passed. Um, Rabia's condition worsened every day. She could no longer get up and even struggled to breathe. One night, Malik woke up to his mother's weeping. He rushed to her side. "Mother, what is wrong with you?" The woman spoke in a trembling voice between sobs. "I had a dream, my son. I saw Safiye. She had a cup of water in her hand. She offered it to me. Then she stroked my head and said, 'Do not be afraid, because there is still time to forgive.'" Malik remained silent for a long time. Then he said slowly, "Perhaps this is a blessed dream." Rabia shook her head. Tears rolled from her eyes. "No, my son, this is a message from that pure, wronged woman. We did not know her worth." The next morning, Malik went to the market, but his eyes saw nothing. Every corner reminded him of Safiye. The bakery where he bought bread, the shop where he bought yarn, the stone streets struck by the sun, all echoed with her memory. He stood in front of his empty shop. His hands trembling, he whispered, "O Allah, how could I not see the truth? How could I believe a lie and deny the truth for the sake of that lie?" When evening came, he returned home. In his hand were medicines for his mother. He found the woman tired, almost breathless. She was leaning on pillows, her face pale. He slowly sat next to her. "Mother, if we find Safiye, if we restore her rights, would you want that?" The woman opened her eyes with difficulty. "My son, I have such a remorse in my heart that if you knew, you wouldn't wait a moment. If only there was time. If only there was time." Malik's voice trembled. "Do you think she would forgive us?" Rabia's tear fell onto the pillow. "Righteous women forgive, my son, because their hearts belong to Allah." 2 days passed. The woman's condition deteriorated further. One evening, near sunset, Malik sat in the courtyard and drifted off. He succumbed to sleep, and the dream began. He found himself in a vast desert. He was alone. Thirst was scorching his throat, and his knees were trembling. Just as he was about to fall, Safiye suddenly appeared before him. She was in a white dress. Her face was covered with light. In her hand was a cup filled with clear water. She spoke softly, "Take and drink, for Allah does not harm the servant who repents." Malik reached out his hands, but Safiye smiled. She shook her head. "You cannot drink yet, Malik. You must first give drink to those you oppressed." Suddenly, everything went dark. He woke up covered in sweat. Moonlight streamed through the window. It was as if the sky was a witness to this repentance. He saw his mother next to the bed. The woman was still in prayer. She was prostrating and supplicating. "O Allah, if you have decreed my death, make my last days filled with repentance and forgiveness. Do not bring me into your presence as an oppressor." Malik's eyes filled with tears. He approached her and kissed her hand. He whispered tearfully, "Mother, come, while there is still time, let us restore the rights to their owners. Because a day will come when tears will no longer hold value." Rabia nodded slightly. Words barely spilled from her tired lips. "Go, my son, find her. Go to her door and tell her that her mother-in-law does not want to leave this world without seeking her mercy." At that moment, Malik felt as if the hand of the sky had touched his shoulder. A strength lifted him from his seat. His heart felt light for the first time. He murmured to himself, "My soul will not find peace until I see her face and hear the words, "I forgive you," from her. And with the first rays of morning, he set out on the path of repentance. At the silent edge of the village, away from the noise of the market and the curious eyes of people, there was a small house. It was surrounded by basil bushes. The fresh smell of bread rising from there was carried by the wind into the village every morning. Safiye now lived there with her aunt. She had left Malik's house broken, but not broken from Allah's mercy. She would wake up every morning at the pre-dawn time. She would perform 2 long units of prayer. Then she would open her hands and supplicate, "O Lord, if I am wronged, make my patience an honor for me. Make this trial a higher rank for me, and grant my heart the grace to hold no hatred against any person." After the prayer, she would sit at the small sewing machine her aunt had gifted her. As her needle worked the thread, it was as if she was weaving a fabric of patience. She sewed clothes for the poor, dedicating 1 day a week to sewing clothes for orphan children, free of charge. One evening, as thunder rumbled, there was a knock on the door. An old woman, drenched by the rain, entered. There was panic in her voice. "Daughter, have you heard? Malik's mother is very sick. She cannot get out of bed." The needle fell from Safi's hand. She slowly lifted her head. Her voice trembled, yet it was gentle despite the pain inside. Rabia, may Allah grant her healing. Sickness is an atonement for sins." She did not sleep a wink that night. One part of her heart reminded her of the wounds of the past, and the other said, "You must not turn your back on the sick." Close to the morning call to prayer, she got up. She put a small pot of lentil soup on. She baked hot bread alongside it. She also wrapped a bottle of medicine she had bought from the pharmacy in a clean cloth. She turned to her aunt. "Let's send this food and medicine to Rabia. But they must not know it came from me." Her aunt could not hold back her tears. "The light in your heart, my daughter, shames even the faces of oppressors." Safiye smiled. "I do not wish for their shame, but for their guidance." In the morning, she sent the package through a neighbor woman. She instructed her, "Tell them a woman sent this, only for the sake of Allah's pleasure." The woman went and delivered the entrusted package to Rabia. The elderly woman was surprised. "Who sent this?" she asked. The woman replied, she did not give her name. She only said it was for the sake of Allah's pleasure and wished you healing. Rabia opened the package. Suddenly, her hands trembled, because the smell of the food, the texture of the bread, was exactly the same as the food that came from Safiye's hands. When that smell, which the years had failed to make her forget, struck her nose, her eyes widened. The bottle fell from her hand. She muttered with a trembling voice, "It is her. This came from her hand." Rabia did not speak for hours. Then she began to cry with sobs. For the first time, her pillow was soaked with tears of true remorse. Every drop was melting the stones in her heart. "O Lord," she said, "how can I face the one I wronged? If she does not forgive me, how can I forgive myself?" Just then, Malik walked in. Seeing his mother weeping, he rushed to her. "Mother, what happened? Why are you crying?" Rabia whispered between her sobs. "Do you know who sent us this food, my son?" Malik was surprised. "Who?" The woman pressed her hands to her chest. Her voice was almost a whisper. "Safiye, my son, Safiye. That angelic woman we drove out of her home with slander, she is still doing good for us." Malik's face froze. For a moment, his breath caught. His eyes glazed over. His heart was like a bell that had been silent for a long time. It had begun to ring again. Malik was rooted to the spot at that moment. It was as if a dagger had been thrust into his heart. "Safi," he whispered. Rabia slowly nodded. Tears streamed down her eyes. Her face was pale, but her voice was now sincere. "Yes. What a noble servant of Allah she is. She sent us her own food. Yet, we drove her out of the house hungry and weeping with slander." Malik remained silent. He only lowered his head. His hands were clasped on his knees. His chest rose and fell. Every breath was burning with the fire of regret. There was silence for a while. Then Rabia, in a weak but firm voice, whispered, "My son, before death comes for me, I want to tell you something." Malik immediately lifted his head anxiously. "Mother, what are you saying? You will get well by Allah's will." The woman raised her hand and silenced him. The tears shed this time were genuine. "No, Malik, let me speak. I fear meeting my Lord with this burden." Malik held his mother's hands, kneeling beside her knees. "What burden, mother? Tell me, I'm listening." Rabia was silent for a long time. Her eyes wandered over her son's face. With remorse, with love, but most of all, with shame. Then the confession spilled from her trembling lips. "I was jealous, Malik. I was jealous of her with you. I was afraid of losing the place in your heart that belonged to me." Malik's face suddenly froze. His eyes widened, and his lips trembled. It was as if he had been slapped by an invisible hand. The woman continued. Her voice sounded like a broken child's. "I spoke ill of her to you. I slandered her. Her composure, her love, drove me mad. I was afraid that I would fade away in your heart." Then she closed her eyes and whispered, "Safi was not the oppressor, Malik. I was the oppressor. I planted the suspicion in you. I hid that necklace. Then I gave it to the neighbor to put it under her bed." Malik's breath caught. He put his hands to his head. His voice became muffled. "Oh Allah, so all that slander was done by you?" Rabia nodded. Her voice choked with sobs. "Yes, my son. Jealousy blinded me. Since that day, Allah has taken away both the peace of my heart and the strength of my body." Malik covered his face with his hands. He collapsed and wept. It was a crying that instantly poured out the silence of years from his eyes. The woman raised her hand with difficulty and wiped his tears. "My son," she said, "go to her. Go and ask her to pray for me. Perhaps Allah will have mercy on us." Malik stood up, but his knees were trembling. It was as if the ground had been pulled out from under his feet. He opened the door. Outside, the rain was pouring heavily. The wind struck his face, but he didn't care. He began to walk under the rain. Every step was like a word of regret. Every drop mingled with a prayer for forgiveness. He cried out, looking up at the sky, "O Lord, how painful it is for a person to realize their mistake only after everything is over. Forgive me, Allah. Forgive me." When he reached the edge of the village, a faint oil lamp shone from the window of a small house on the horizon. He recognized that light. It was the same light that shone on Safi's hands while she prayed. He slowed his steps. His heart was pounding in his chest. He heard women's voices and light laughter coming from the house. He stopped for a moment. He asked an old woman who was passing by, "Whose house is this?" The woman smiled. This is Safia's house. Tonight is her wedding night. Allah granted her a righteous husband, a merchant from the market. Everyone knows him for his piety." Malik's color drained. It was as if his heart had fallen to his feet. He could not utter a single word. He only lifted his head. He looked at the light streaming from the window. As the rain beat against his face. That light blurred, mixing with his tears. And just at that moment, Safiye saw him from inside. She slowly approached the door. In a silence mingled with the roar of the rain, she opened the door slightly and saw the man who had once broken her heart standing before her. They met eyes. On Malik's face was a lifetime of regret, and on Safiye's there was calm mercy. At that moment, no words or time were needed. The rain spoke, and the wind bore witness. Safiye slightly bowed her head. Her voice was almost a prayer. May Allah forgive you, Malik. I forgave you a long time ago. Then she closed the door. The light withdrew inside, and Malik, who knelt outside in the rain, raised his hands to the sky and wept. My lord, the heart of the wronged is the mirror of your justice. The wind subsided. The echo of a single repentance under the rain lingered in the silence of the village for a long time. Under the rain, his head bowed, his tears mingling with the raindrops. Safiye silently took a few steps towards him. Even her footsteps were lost in the howling of the rain. She asked in a soft voice, almost as fragile as a prayer, Malik, what brought you here tonight? Malik raised his head. His face was pale and his lips were trembling. Words were knotted in his throat. He could only say this, I only came to ask for your forgiveness, not for the sake of the world, because I cannot come before Allah having left you wronged like this. Safiye looked at him for a long time. There was pain in her gaze, but within that pain, a spark of undying mercy was also hidden. Her voice trembled slightly. I forgive you, Malik. I already forgave you the day I left your house. She paused for a moment. Then, with a softer voice that mingled with the wind, she added, But don't come back. Our path ends here. Malik stood still for a moment. He could neither speak nor breathe. He wanted to thank her, to kneel and apologize, perhaps to embrace her hands. But the words drowned in his throat. He bowed his head. As tears streamed from his eyes, he whispered, May Allah be pleased with you, Safiye. May you find blessing in your life and peace in your heart. Then he turned his back with heavy steps. As he walked away under the rain, the sound of his footsteps gradually faded until the darkness completely swallowed him. Safiye remained standing on the doorstep. The wind tousled her hair. The rain fell on her face, but she didn't wipe it away. It was as if it was mingling with the tears flowing from her eyes, turning into glistening drops of mercy. She raised her head to the sky. A prayer spilled from her lips. O Allah, leave no hatred in my heart for anyone. Just as you forgave me, forgive those who hurt me. Weeks passed after that night. The rain had cleansed the roads, but it had not extinguished the fire in Malik's chest. He woke up every morning with a heaviness. As he lay in bed, his hand habitually reached out to the empty pillow beside him. Then he remembered Safiye was gone. Neither her voice, nor her scent, nor even her image belonged to him anymore. The house was completely empty. As he sat there, his eyes would often gaze towards the market. He would imagine seeing her in the crowd, with her slow walk, carrying her small basket in her hand, covering her face from the sun. That voice would always echo in his ear. Sustenance is from Allah, Malik. But he does not place that blessing where there is oppression. His days began to blend together. Every bite of food stuck in his throat. Every sip knotted in his gullet. Even his breath grew heavy. He found no peace even in his sleep. His dreams had turned into mirrors. In every mirror, he saw himself alone. Doors were knocked on, but no one answered. It was as if the world had forgotten him. One night, he was sitting by his mother's bedside. Rabia was now on the thin line between life and death. Her face was pale, and her hands were icy cold. She opened her eyes with difficulty. Her voice was like a faint breath. "My son, did you see her?" Malik wiped his tears, bowing his head. "I saw her, mother. And yes, she forgave me." The woman's lips trembled. Tears streamed from her eyes. "Did she truly forgive you?" Malik nodded. His voice was mixed with a sob. "She forgave me, mother, but that forgiveness burned me even more, because her mercy was my punishment." Rabia took a deep breath. With a final surge of strength, she whispered, "Tell her, I also prayed for her before I died. May Allah forgive her and me." Then her last words spilled from her lips. With a pure submission, free from the pride that had lasted a lifetime, she said, "My Lord, forgive her and me." And quietly, her soul faded away like a candle flame. Her face looked peaceful for the first time in many years. Malik sat by her bedside until morning. He did not cry. He only stared at the wall, the lamp, and his past, remaining silent like a dead man. In the morning, he buried his mother. Then he returned home. But he could no longer stay there. The walls of the house echoed with Safi's voice with every breath. He could not bear it for a moment. He sold everything. He even got rid of the shop he had once boasted about with pride. He turned his back on the village and began to walk. He neither knew where he was going, nor had any reason to return. He only remembered that last night under the rain and Safie's forgiving gaze. Because that gaze had taught him how heavy a trial mercy truly is. One day, Malik started walking towards the outskirts of the village. He seemed to be searching for himself, his past, and the peace his soul had lost. The roads were quiet. The earth was damp. His steps were slow, with the weight of regret. The road took him to the old market. There was a crowd in the distance. Women and children were gathered around, laughing. In the center of them, a young woman was sewing fabric with her needle. Peace emanated from her face. It was as if patience, in human form, was sitting there. He approached a little, and at that moment, his heart almost stopped. It was Safiye, but in a completely different state. Her face shone with light. Her eyes held the serenity of people who have forgiven. She was teaching the young girls around her how to sew. Her voice was soft, her words wise. "My daughters," she would say, "whoever sews for people with honesty, Allah will dress them in the garment of honor, both in this world and the next." Malik stood far away. He could not speak. Every stitch of the needle felt like it was reopening a wound in his heart. Every laugh was the echo of a blessing he had lost. He whispered internally, "O Safi, you were the mercy Allah sent to me. but I closed that door with my own hands. Now, all that remains for me is a love that came too late and a regret that never subsides. He took a step, but then stopped. He did not want to cast a shadow on her peace. He did not want to remind her of himself. He raised his head to the sky, and his lips trembled. O Allah, make her happiness the fate of those who did not oppress her, and forgive me, because I could only love her when it was too late. Then he slowly walked away. His eyes were still fixed on her until Safiye disappeared like a light fading behind the sun. Time passed. The village changed. The houses were renewed. The streets took on a different face. But some stories cannot be erased even by time. It is said that Malik's house still stands. Its door has been closed for years. No sound or light comes from inside. Only the wind howls as it passes through the walls, as if whispering the verses of regret. Malik quit trading. He began to help the poor silently in the market. He asked no price from anyone and expected no return. His face had changed. There was no longer arrogance in it, but the light of submission. One day, they asked him about the past. He replied, with a bitter smile, "Oppression is fire. Only tears can extinguish it." Safiye, on the other hand, became a story on the lips of the village. Her name was mentioned as a symbol of mercy. When the villagers referred to someone as merciful and patient, they would say, "Her mercy is like Safiye's." And whoever heard her story would raise their hands to the sky and think, "Subhanallah, no servant is forgotten in his justice." A year after his mother's death, Malik fell seriously ill. One night during Ramadan, leaning against his cane among the earthen houses, he went outside. The full moon was in the sky. It was as if Allah's face of mercy was looking at him. He spoke in a trembling voice, "O Lord, if you did not grant me worldly happiness, then do not deprive me of the provision of the hereafter." Then his eyes shone. He smiled as if he had seen a familiar face in the distance. And with that smile, he surrendered his soul. When morning came, Safiye left her house to go to the market. As she walked down the road, she stopped in front of a house whose door was covered with a black cloth. She asked the man, "Who passed away?" The man replied, "Malik, Rabia's son." Safiye remained silent for a long time. Then she raised her head to the sky. Her voice was light, but contained a deep serenity. "May Allah have mercy on you, Malik. At least you found the path, even if it was late." Then she continued walking. Like a morning that breaks after the rain, there was neither hatred nor burden in her heart. This was the story of a patient woman exalted by Allah and a man who sought repentance after oppression. A woman's forgiveness became a man's salvation, and the truth that remained was this: Allah is just. He forgets no one. See you in the next story. May you be entrusted to Allah.